Am I audible now, Prabhat sir?
Yes, ma'am. Clearly audible. Good to go, ma'am.
Prabhat sir, am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible. You are audible, ma'am. We should move ahead, ma'am.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Vidhi, ma'am, you are audible, but there is some network issue at your end. I think your voice is not clear, but we should start, ma'am.
I can start with my phone. A Word document. इसमें भी गया, हाँ इसमें नहीं है। एक I'm so sorry for the technical glitch that we are facing right now. Please tell me, am I audible to everyone? Prabhat sir, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You are very clearly audible, ma'am.
All right. We start with today's webinar on autonomous vehicles and future technology for everyone. Everyone here has the sense that right now is one of the moments when we are influencing the future. A very good morning and warm welcome to the live webinar on autonomous vehicles and future technology for students of Bal Bharti Public School, Noida, and the sister Atal.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Under the Atal Mentor of Change program. I would like to welcome Mr. Soumitra Dev, who is Mentor of Change, Atal Innovation Mission, working as General Manager in Hyundai Motors India Private Limited, New Delhi. Mr. Dey has a vast experience of 21 plus years in various automobile companies, starting from Hindustan Motors, General Motors, Ford India Limited, and Honda Cars India Limited to Hyundai. Mentorship projects that Mr. Dey supports and undertake are IoT and applications using ESP8266, ESP32, Arduino, long-range radio modules, robotics, applications using ROS, Raspberry Pi, Jetson, Nano, micro, nano drones, quadcopters, hexacopters, and autonomous robots. It is my proud privilege to introduce our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Soumitra Dev. We welcome you, sir. And now, without further ado, over to you, Mr. Soumitra Dev.
Very good morning, and thank you, madam, for a wonderful introduction about me.
I'm really thankful to Principal Madam Mrs. Asha, as well as you and Ms. Rani for giving me an opportunity to present about autonomous vehicles and current and future technology. Before I move, I would also like to welcome the wonderful, brilliant students of Bal Bharati Public Schools, and I have seen their work on your Facebook pages. Wonderful achievements that the students are doing, and I'm really honored to be a little part of this momentum with our wonderful students here. So, a very warm welcome to all you. Before I start, ma'am has already presented about me, so I would just give a brief introduction about me. So, as a mentor, you should know who I am, where I come from, and what do I do. So, I would make some journey about my passion. This slide is not just about me, but this will be a motivation for all of your students who always aspire to become something in life in their school, and this is the most wonderful moment. So I am from Calcutta. I was born and brought up. I studied in Assembly of God Church School, Kolkata, where it all began. And here was my school in Calcutta, where I learned so many things: do it yourself, electronics, all the projects, the things the students do. We never had an ATL lab, but we had the physics lab. My favorite physics teacher, Mr. Samuel, my principal, Mr. Hartnett. So I would little bit talk about a few minutes on the school and how I came into my passion about cars. So right from class 6, I wanted to become an automobile engineer. I used to dream about cars. I used to draw about cars. I used to make RC models and whatever electronic stuff that we used to have in those times, year 1995. So I used to do that. And my journey was so happy. And class 6, 7, 8, 9, I was obsessed with cars, and everybody in Calcutta had one car that was an ambassador car. So, which was an iconic ambassador car, which all of you must have seen one point on your life. So, this car was a very big turning point in my life. So, I'll just brief you how it became a big turning point in my life. So, as I said, I loved cars, and this was the car which my dad had, and I was very much interested how it was fixed. So by class 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, I could fix this car if it was not starting. So that was a starting point of my automobile history. So it became so that I was so obsessed with this car and its technology, its how the distributor worked, how the spark plugs worked. So one fine day, I was like a subject matter expert on ambassador cars. So my neighbors, when their cars never started, they used to call me and ask me, "Can you fix it?" So I became some troubleshooter in my, in neighborhood. No, I will tell you how is it linked to my career and how is it linked to my school. So I was doing my do-it-yourself, all my studies, and I cleared my ICSC in class 10, and I needed 90% marks in my physics, chemistry, and maths to get a science seat in 11th and 12th. And unfortunately, I dipped in chemistry. My PCM average was 89. Now came my depression in terms of how do I get science and how do I move ahead in my career. My dad always, he always encouraged me in my physics and my chemistry and all my subjects and always on my do it yourself. But he had a doubt in his mind that this guy he knows so much about the cars. I hope he doesn't become a mechanic. So that was a big doubt in my father's mind. So how do I become an engineer was a challenge. So I was on the wait list to get science, and my confirmed seat was commerce. So I was like totally depressed, and I wanted some miracle to happen so that I get a science seat. So what I did is I started praying to my favorite god Hanumanji every Tuesday, and I wanted some miracle to happen to get me a science. So the miracle did happen, and it's really very, very. It's a turning point in my life. So one fine day, I go to my school to fill the form for the 11th and 12th, and hoping I would get a science seat. And that was a very big rainy day. When it rains in Calcutta, I hope you must have seen in the TV and the other newspapers that it gets flooded in the roads of Calcutta. And our ambassador car had a 1.5 liter engine, and it had a distributor cap way down. So whenever there is a rainwater entry, the car won't start. So I was going out of my school gate and I saw my principal's green ambassador WMT 1134. It was his number. He had a green ambassador car. And I saw that car is struggling to start. So this was my opportunity to please my principal, sir. So what I did, I told the driver, open the bonnet. I cleaned the carburetor I cleaned the distributor cap in 15 minutes, and the car started. And my principal sir was so happy and amazed, and he knew my do-it-yourself skills in school, but he never knew that I could fix cars. So my principal sir was so happy, he offered me to drop me to the Howrah station, from where I go back home on a train. I used to go back. So he was on the way in the car. I requested him, sir, I need a science seat, and I'm really desperate about learning. So he never committed because he was a very big man of principles, but he said he will look into it. So there were 4 guys in our class 10 who did not get a science seat. That was me and 3 of my friends who were cut off at 89, not 90. Next 3 days was a big tense moment, more going to temple and praying. And finally, the 3rd day I get a list, I get selected into science. And that is my journey towards science. So the moral of this story is you should follow the passion, but you should be very serious with the marks that you get in your school. Like you need to have a good cutoff to get into an entry into all the engineering colleges. And then after I ensured that I never get below 90 in any of my exams, I cleared my BE Mechanical in Tamil Nadu in 1999. I secured 2nd rank in the university in mechanical engineering from University of Madras. Then my dream became true. I got selected in a company called Mitsubishi, HM Mitsubishi, Hindustan Motors Mitsubishi parent plant. There used to be a car called a Mitsubishi Lancer, if you all remember. So Mitsubishi Lancer was my growth towards the automobile, all the knowledge. So I worked in the research and development there. Few years in HM and Mitsubishi, I wanted to know how German cars are. So I moved to General Motors. General Motors was a journey of research and development. I was a vehicle test engineer. So my job was yeah.
Sir, may I interrupt you? Sorry, sir. Actually, if it is okay with you, can you turn on your camera, webcam, sir?
Yeah, just hold on.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Just hold on. Oh, I'm really sorry. So all my expressions, I thought the computer has seen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just hold on. I'm really sorry. Yes. Fine. So this was my journey in terms of getting into an automobile company. That was Mitsubishi. Started off with the Mitsubishi Lancer. So I was in the research and development. So we used to localize various parts of the Mitsubishi Lancer, which was a Japanese product, to bring it into Indian condition. Then I moved to General Motors. General Motors was a profile of vehicle testing. So it was a very interesting job for all the students that you would love to do that. You are the test engineer of General Motors, means that you are the authorized person to drive the cars which are not launched in India. So I was a very proud test engineer in my company, and I was, when everybody used to drive the cars which are already produced, I used to drive the cars which were not entered into Indian market. So I drove the Subaru Forester, I drove the Tavera, I drove all the cars. And my job was I need to take these cars for a validation test. So we had a test track in our General Motors plant, which was located at Halol in Gujarat. And my job was to ensure that I validate the various engine and chassis parts on the test track. If something is not suitable for India, I need to report it back to Germany. So I love this job, and I learned. I had great mentors who taught me automobile here. I had great bosses in this company who really taught me the basics of automobile engineering. Few years in General Motors, and then I thought, what are the Japanese doing? So I was fascinated by a car called the Accord V6. It has 6-cylinder engines. So I wanted to know how does the 6-cylinder engine behave. So I changed my job to Honda CL cars. I landed up in Noida. Factory was in Greater Noida. So I was looking after technical support in Honda. I was given a responsibility to ensure that how these cars behaves on Indian road. Lot of field feedback, how these cars behave in various hot condition, in the desert test, in the cold test when we used to take these cars in the very high altitude in the temperatures. A lot of experience in field in Honda. 3 years down the line in Honda, I thought, what's next? So I went into Ford. Ford was a company which gave me an exposure into various aspects of service. Service, when I talk about customer service, it is that you take your cars to the dealership for various issues, like the car doesn't perform, there is oil consumption, or there is some other issues. So I need to give them a field fix. Now, the challenge between my earlier job and Ford was that in the other companies in research and development, you have ample time to give a solution to a problem. For example, if you have an issue in a steering, you have ample time to develop a new steering. But when you are in field service, that you are looking after customers, you bring a car to my dealership, and then I need to understand and give you a solution right now. So it was giving a lot of current solution to various issues or what the customers face. So it gave me a challenge of giving solution to various issues in the vehicle on a very small or less time. Then I moved into Hyundai. In Hyundai, I am here for the last 9 years. Wonderful Korean company. I really love this company in terms of my exposure, and I look after the various service operations of various technical support across my network. My office of Hyundai is in Jasola in Delhi. So you can see a Kona Electric photograph. This is the latest Kona Electric, which is an electric vehicle. Fantastic product to work with, and so on. So this was all my journey from 1999 to 2020, where I told you about my passion. I always wanted to be in the car industry, and I achieved this passion with a lot of ups and downs. So you should always have a goal to have a passion. So now it's all about me, and today with me I have my colleague Mr. Mayank Sachan, who is also from Hyundai. He is a manager in Hyundai. He works with our team. So Mayank, just a brief introduction about you, please. Go ahead.
Good morning, all of you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to present our passion over here. As sir rightfully said, we have to follow our passion in life. That is what I have done also for the time being, and for the future in the higher time being. The thing is that exactly like sir, I also had a simple mindset that I have to go in the automobile industry. Nothing in my mechanical career. I am a BTech mechanical from Motilal Nehru National Institute of Technology. And since that time, I had no other passion of any mechanical thing other than cars. Now, when I have gotten over here, I have learned so much about the current process, and then I have got to know about this autonomous vehicle. So please watch out for the presentation. Please watch out for the presentation, as you guys gonna learn a lot about it. Sorry, Prabhat, there would be an issue with my video, so I won't be able to click on that. Okay, sorry for that, man.
Yeah, Prabhat, am I visible now? It's all okay. Can I go ahead?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are clearly visible.
Yeah. So now let's go to, before we go into the formal autonomous vehicle and technology, let us go to the basic laws of robotics, because an autonomous vehicle is a robot. So the robot, the definition of robot stands, it is the robotics is a science of combined engineering. It includes computer science, mechanical engineering, it uses chemical engineering, it has electronics in it, it has got all the ingredients to make it a field of robotics. And Mr. Asimov's law, which says about how the robot should behave, and is a very important fundamental before we move forward. So I will just read the law. The law says, the Asimov's law says, a robot should not injure a human being through inaction or allow human beings to come and harm them. The second point, a robot must obey the commands or the orders given by humans, except when the order should conflict with the first law. And the third point, a robot must protect its own existence as long as the protection does not conflict with the first and second law. A very, very, very concise information about how the robotics should move and how the robotic or autonomous vehicle should behave. So if you look at, there are 9 levels of robotics, and we will go to level 6, 7, 8, and 9, which is the today's topic, which are autonomous. So let us look at autonomous vehicles in form of cars, trucks, farm machineries, autonomous free roam vehicles, robots which are able to navigate on their own terrain, autonomous free roam multi-role vehicles which are able to perform wide variety of tasks as they have a navigation, and autonomous free roam multi-role mesh swarm required is a high-end autonomy and cooperation. So I would move to the next slide. So the definition of autonomous vehicle is that is something which moves on an autopilot mode. And as you know, the autonomous vehicles need sensors, it needs steering, it needs GPS, it needs various uh, mapping methodologies like laser scan or camera to map the environment. So if I need to make an autonomous robot move or autonomous vehicle move, I have to make or measure my environment in which I need to move. So that is the definition of an autonomous vehicle. And there are 5 levels of automation that are there, and this is attributed to the current vehicles that we have or the cars which are in autonomous cars. So there are 0 to 5 levels. The first 0 level is no automation. There is no automation in this vehicle, like a manual transmission vehicle with clutch, brake, pedal, and so on. Second level of operation, that is the level 1, is the driver assistance. Now, when you look at driver assistance sort of automation, means you need can control the speed of the vehicle using certain switches which are called cruise control switches. So the cars are called drive by wire car. They are called DBW. So what I do, I cut off the accelerator and I move the throttle to a stepper motor, and I control the speed of the stepper motor with a switch on the steering wheel. So that switch is called a cruise control. So the cruise control, the monitoring mechanism is a human driver, and the dynamic task is performed by the human driver, and the system just gives the input to the throttle body. Partial automation is hands off, where the steering system is autonomous, but the braking and the clutching system is human driven. Now let us go to a little bit advanced conditional automation, which is the number third point, which is the conditional automation, where the eyes are off the vehicle in terms of automation. The steering is controlled by the system, the environment is mentioned or the controlled by the system, and the dynamic driving task is controlled by a human for the first level. When I talk about human, I keep the braking control under my own control. High level of automation, all the systems are controlled through the vehicle system, that is there is no human intervention, even the mind is off, and we will show a small video about that in the next slide. And full automation is steering wheel is optional, you don't need a steering wheel at all to drive the car. So these are various 5 levels of industry automation practices in terms of vehicle autonomous. Now, I have some videos about how the technology has evolved from self-driving car to the cars in 21st century. But unfortunately, there is some issue. The audio may not come. So what I will do is I will play the future of self-driving video, which is a self-explanatory video where you will talk, where you can see the various the Google AI vehicle, the Volvo and Tesla model. So I'm playing this video, so just have patience. I'm really sorry that the audio will not come. Is it okay, Prabhas? Can I go ahead?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So that was about the autonomous driving. So in the video you must have seen, we have shown level 0 to level 5 and how the driver takes off his hands from the steering wheel and how the steering is fully autonomous. And you must have also seen that there is a full autonomous system where the driver is sitting in the cabin, so there is completely driverless. So these are the technologies which are coming up under development. Tesla is quite advanced on that. Even we are going to see a lot of developments in the coming year in 2021 with a lot of autonomous vehicles in various other countries. So this was a small introduction about autonomous vehicles in terms of self-driving technology in various automobile industry. Now let us go to other autonomous systems. So if you look at what do I do with the autonomous vehicle is the benefit that I get from it. So if you standardize the various autonomous vehicle benefits, so it helps us in controlling or addressing various safety issues due to human error. So if I have autonomous vehicle, it will follow all the traffic rules. It will not overtake unnecessarily. It will not overspeed. It will not jump the red light. Second, it reduces human fatigue. Second, it is safe to work in hazardous environments. Suppose I need to do mining activity with autonomous vehicle. It is absolutely safe in terms of the robot, but it is unsafe for the humans to work in mines. So there's a lot of scope in mining environments and chemical environments for the autonomous vehicles to work. Another important analogy or the importance of autonomous vehicle is whenever there is a issue in terms of not accomplishing a task or a location or a navigation, the autonomous vehicles have a fail-safe. They give control back to human being. So that is one important aspect of benefits of autonomous vehicle. Now, based on various terrains, how the autonomous vehicles are used. So there are three terrains. One is a autonomous ground vehicle, which moves on the ground, which is called UGV. Autonomous aerial vehicles, which are called UAVs. Autonomous surface vehicles or underwater vehicles, which are called AUV. So let us look at some of the examples of these UGV, UAV, and AUV. The first, on autonomous ground vehicle, you must have seen a lot of videos on Amazon delivery in terms of autonomous robots. So this is Amazon Prime robot, which moves around on various colonies in various countries in US, and they deliver in terms of stuffs. They deliver various couriers. So it is a contactless delivery. Next is on the farming activity. So these are autonomous machines which are used for farming purposes. They are used in terms of agricultural fields and they do not require any human intervention for that. Third, very common in terms of robots which are used for cleaning our houses. So this is something which are coming in demand in terms of people are using these to clean their floors. So it eliminates the use of other helps in terms of cleaning them. So the autonomous floor cleaning robots are becoming popular. Next, let us go to the vehicles, which are the Uber and the taxis, which are used in terms of being autonomous and so on. And the last and the most important for the defense sector, we have autonomous tanks, which are developed by DRDO, under development by DRDO in terms of fully autonomous way of navigation and even using the weapon system on the ground. Let us go to the autonomous aerial vehicles. I will start with the aerial vehicle Aura, which is under development by DRDO. So this is an autonomous aircraft. It moves on a predefined path and it has the capability of do the surveillances and other defense activities. So we are very proud of this Indian autonomous vehicle, aerial vehicle, the Aura. Next, in my company, Hyundai has collaborated with Uber, and we have demonstrated last year in Korea about this autonomous aircraft. It is basically a flying taxi that we have developed in South Korea along with our partner Uber. And so this is going to be a commercialization in terms of few years from now as a flying taxi. Next, go to the drones. The drones which are used in agriculture, spraying, you must have seen a lot of drone activities during these the corona times, where a lot of drones do a lot of surveillances as well as they do a lot of spraying and so on. This is a very nice project. Third is moving around and transporting food. So Domino's, pizza delivery systems, and so these are something aerial vehicles which you will see in near future and under development. In terms of surface and underwater vehicles, as I said, these are primarily used in oceans, in river, in collecting the conditions of samples of water autonomously. It is used in underwater exploration. It is used how to search for underwater life autonomously, so you don't need any human being to do that. Then you have underwater weapon systems which are used in the defense sector. Then you have exploration vehicles, and you have autonomous boats or ships which are doing certain sort of surveillances or the testing various samples. So these are the applications which are used in unmanned sea vehicles and underwater or surface vehicles which are used in today's practice. Now let's look how an autonomous vehicle should move on a road. So I will take a bit of time in this slide, and you will see that if I need to move any autonomous vehicle on the ground, I need to sense the environment. So I need to have a map of the environment, which is called a global map. A global map is something which is right now available as a in your Google map. So it has got a global map where it says that if I go to sector 21 in Noida, I have sector 21 here, I have sector 25 here, I have sector 18 here, and my robot is aware that what are the roads available there. The second map, which is called a local map. Now, local map implies that in my global map, I have fixed structures like flyovers. I have fixed structures like trees, or I have fixed structures like buildings. In a local map, I have temporary structures also. So this is the difference between a global map and a local map. So when I make a local map for my robot or my autonomous vehicle, the local map talks about instantaneous objects on the road, which means the car which is 5 meters from me, a bicycle rider who is 10 meters from me, and an obstacle which is 5 meters or 7 meters from me. So to perform the navigation on an open road, I need to have a global map, which is my GPS, which talks about the satellite. The second one, I need to have a local map, which is generated by sensors like the LiDAR, which are generated by depth cameras. So I will come into this. So here where the artificial intelligence part of robotics come into it in terms of autonomous vehicle. So if I need to move this robot in this open road, I need to have the various street signs, I need to have various markings, I need to have the zebra crossing from which people are going to move, and I need to have the road signages also, which talks about which road I am right now. So this is a typical condition of a building block of autonomy. Environment mapping, as I said, I need to have a local map, and to generate a local mapping of what my autonomous vehicle moves through, I need to have a passive and active sensors. As I just said, passive sensors, they detect the existing energy like light, radiation, reflection from object, environment, and widespread objects of these digital images and food. So if you look at passive sensors, so I have a passive sensor. I don't, Pravas, is it visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah, so this is a depth camera. It is called an Intel RealSense depth camera. So it has got a D45 with IMU on it, which has got an inertial measurement. So I will talk about what IMU does. So this is a depth camera that can be used for as a passive sensor in terms of navigation and camera navigation, which I will show you in the next slide. Other important sensors are active sensor. So this is a very basic sensor. I think all of you must have worked in your robots using ultrasonic sensors. So these are basically a range finder. They find the range from where that object is or how far it is object. We have radar, which is radio detection and ranging. We have LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging. So I'll talk a lot about LiDAR because I have a LiDAR right here in my robot, if you can see. So I would talk how you can use LiDAR to create autonomous maps. So LiDAR uses mechanical scanning, micromechanical scanning. There are flash LiDARs, there are arrays of LiDARs, and various other metamaterial LiDARs which are used for mapping as well as range finding. Now, if you see the various sensors comparison, cameras work from 0 to 250 meters, ultrasonic sensors work from 0.2 to 10 meters, radar from 0.2 to 300 in terms of autonomous, LiDAR works up to 250 meters. And there are various data rates which are used for the computer to process this data in terms of processing as well as image classification and AI and so on. So the Tesla model, if you look at, the uses mounted radars, it uses cameras and ultrasonic sensors. Volvo uses LiDAR as well as 360-degree LiDAR, and Waymo uses a 360-degree LiDAR and 9 cameras. So it is image classification as well as the LiDAR is totally used in autonomous vehicle to ensure the perfect mapping as well as object avoidance. So this is an example how a LiDAR scan looks on a car. So you can see there is a scanning rates, there are cameras. So this gives a gradient of various imaging as well as the LiDAR positioning of the vehicle on how the entire mapping take place, for which you will next you will see a small video about our prototype also. So this is a BMW, this is a Volvo and a Tesla model in terms of how a LiDAR light is used for generating the mapping. There are cameras and there are side cameras for using the object avoidance as well as image recognition as well as doing the AI for the vehicles and give it a autonomous navigation feature. So this is a typical example of current days autonomous car. So if you go out and look for autonomous car in Google or any other YouTube, or if you see a actual autonomous car, you will find the basic LiDAR, the front cameras, the side cameras and LiDAR as well as radars in these cars. Similarly, in Tesla, you will not find a LiDAR because their technology is towards using cameras. So they use depth cameras, they use various scanning cameras to generate the autonomous maps as well as navigation. So that is the difference between the Volvo Uber strategy and the Tesla model. You won't find huge LiDARs because Tesla doesn't believe much on LiDAR technology. So as I said, this is a block diagram of how the various sensors work. So there are sensing attributes to the autonomous vehicle through cameras, radars, LiDAR, various sensors, inertial measurement unit, which are gyroscope, which are compass, which are magnetometers, and which gives the direction and the flow of the vehicle. Then we have the GNSS, which is the satellite data. Then we have map data, vehicle to vehicle communication from each other in terms of ensuring 100% autonomy, and vehicle to infrastructure communication, which is also related to the complete autonomy of the vehicle. When all these information go, we do a simultaneous localization and mapping, which is called SLAM. And once a SLAM is made, which is a generation of a global map and a local map, we do the path planning. When we do a path planning, we control the steering, we control the acceleration, we control the braking, and we use image AI to see the signaling and movement. So this is how it works. And there are two types of artificial intelligence which are used sequentially, where the driving process is decomposed into components of various pipelines like sensing, localization, and path planning, and end-to-end solution based on deep learning. And so this AI and deep learning is a separate subject, but I will give you some examples when I play the actual autonomous vehicle in the video form. You will understand how the AI works in terms of various strategies for autonomous. Machine learning method, as I said, if I need to make various objects understand, I need to recognize that this object is a bicycle, this object is a truck, this is a signal, this is a tree. So what I do CNN or convolutional neural networks mainly to process images. I will make it very simple for you students to understand this. I have library of various images that I need to recognize. So I store 10 and 1,000 images of one particular object on the robot's computer. In other words, if I have this bottle to be recognized, I will take minimum 10,000 types of bottles images and store it in the memory or the CNN neural network of my robot computer. And then I will ask the robot to recognize any bottle. It will match from those 10,000 known libraries of images. And if it finds that this is a bottle, it will give an output, yes, I have found a bottle. So this goes for the autonomous vehicle. I give minimum 10 to 10,000 samples of roads, signals, signages, uh, speed breakers, signaling light, and in India the hand signal is very important, which you will see. So when the policeman stops the vehicle, my autonomous vehicle should understand the policeman means I need to stop. So my system should be artificially intelligent enough to understand a policeman's gestures. That level of automation is happening. So if you go into deep into study, you can read about Jetson Nano deep learning. There are very good examples in Python as well as C++ code. You can use various modules to generate simulation. So I will send you a link of the resources that you need to understand deep learning and image recognition, which is a second subject, which will take some more time for me to explain. Now comes the challenge for Indian market. As I was saying that if I need to make the autonomous vehicle move anywhere in the world, I need to understand the local situations. I need to understand what are the hand gesture my policeman gives to stop my vehicle. Even if I have a change, suppose you will find that a lot of time there are roadblocks. If a car needs to move from A to B and that road is blocked, I need to have a diversion. So all these intelligent decisions are taken by the AI system, the machine learning system, the deep learning system, and then the robot needs to remap or reroute itself to make a complete autonomous movement. So in this photograph, you have found there's a motorcycle, there's a person, there is a bicycle, the gesture of the hand. Every image, let me tell you, there are 10,000s of images of each and every object in the deep neural network for the computer to compute. So you can understand what is the range of processing speed that a autonomous vehicles, robot or the computer needs to handle when it is moving on the road. So there are various sensors, as I said, for the image. As I said, the depth cameras, which I just showed you, the depth cameras are used to recognize these images and do the process. Other images like the LiDAR, the things. I would also like to show you a mini LiDAR, which are used in a lot of drone applications. So just give me a minute. Prabhat, is it visible?
Yes,
you
sir.
can find a LiDAR here. Can you see that? So this is a LiDAR we can use. We are right now using this as a range finder as well as using for localization of maps. So it is basically coupled with a PixHawk processor, which is a PixHawk 4, and we are using Jetson Nano to process these images. So work is in progress. So this is all about how AI helps the robotics or the autonomous vehicle in understanding various images, the road signs, and so on. Next. Path planning, as I said, when I need to make a path planning, I need to understand how the robots move. I need to understand the diversions. I need to understand the speed limit of this road. So all this is controlled by the CNN as well as the deep learning network which are used in these vehicles. Now, communication and connectivity is very important. Now, let us example, if you drive an autonomous vehicle, tomorrow you are on the main road in Delhi, you are going towards India Gate. So your car is autonomous, the other people cars are non-autonomous. Now, what is the relation between an autonomous car and a non-autonomous car? In connected cars, you will find that the car sends data of its various parameters to a server which is located either in a cloud or in particular server. For example, in today's car, let us look at, I will give an example of Hyundai Venue. All of you must have heard about the Hyundai Venue. Now, Hyundai Venue is called a connected car. Now, it is not an autonomous car, but it is a connected car. When I talk about connected car, what it does is, I will just explain you in a few minutes. Connected car means The data which are used in the electronic control module are sent to a cloud server every 10 minutes. So it has parameters of acceleration, deceleration. It has got any trouble code which the engine has. Now, what does Hyundai do with this engine data? It's continuously being sent. We monitor the performance of these vehicles, whether they are performing rightly or not. Is there any trouble code? So if there is a connected car trouble code, we get an alert and then we call the customer, look, your car may have a problem with some particular issue in terms of engine, and then we take this car to the workshop, fix the car and bring it back to the customer. So now connected car in terms of autonomous means that my local map is shared with the other local map of the other autonomous vehicle. So if I drive here on an autonomous vehicle on a to India Gate, other cars are non-autonomous. There is always a risk of having a collision because the other car will not stop the right way or accelerate the right way. So I need to have a network of connected cars to ensure 100% autonomy. I hope I was able to explain you this convolutional network in terms of connectivity between cars. So my car needs to talk with the other car to make 100% autonomy. Now this was all about autonomous cars in terms of the various technology. So I would now discuss about our autonomous ground robot that we made. Just a minute. So here was our obsession, myself and Mayank. We wanted to make an actual autonomous ground robot, just like my obsession in Ambassador days. So we made an autonomous robot. The robot sits here. I call this robot Jessie. It is named after my dog. My dog who lived with me for 20 years, so I named after him. I call her Jessie. So this is Jessie robot. So this is a robot which is completely used for autonomous training. So we use this robot to give training to various engineering students also who actually want to learn the various autonomous and robotic systems. So I will talk about this robot in terms of it is a Linux-based system. It has got something called ROS, which is Robot Operating System. In terms of hardware, we are using a Raspberry Pi or you can use a Jetson Nano. I would prefer a Jetson Nano because I would show it has got good processing speed. As you know, a lot of data need to be processed in very little time. It has got a LiDAR. It has got motors with encoders, and we have used mecanum wheels here. The advantage of using a mecanum wheel is that you can strafe the robot in a very short distance and take turns. You will see in the videos which I want to tell you later. It has got a basic microcontroller. It has got motor controllers, and it has got variable power supplies of 5 volt, 12 volt, and 3.3 volt based on the various sensor requirement. So what is ROS? So ROS is Robot Operating System. It is an open source system. So when you learn ROS to make autonomous vehicle, it is completely open source. You need to make various packages that are required for your robot to carry out the various functions of autonomous navigation, or you need to make a arm robot. So this is a small video about what ROS is. I'm really sorry the video will not have audio, but just go through this video about 10 years of what robot operating system is all about. So I'm playing the video, Pravat. So that was the video. I cut it short because I think there's a lag, and I will share this video to all of you later on through email. So as I was discussing ROS, so the ROS is an open source robot operating system. It is completely based on Linux system. So if you want to learn ROS, you need to start a little bit of basic about Linux. Then how to install it on a dual boot, which Mayank has done it for me for a few years back, and I'm using that. So it's a very interesting subject on robot operating and very powerful software for autonomous ground robots. So now various components that I've used in this robot operating this ROS robot is, as I said, we used power supply, which is inbuilt 12 volt through various controllers, and we used all the 5 volt as well as 3.3 volt converters for other sensors like IMU and other encoders. So if you look at it, has got a motor controller. So this is a 40 ampere support BTS 7689 motor controller, because the wheels here, the motors here are 12 kilogram centimeter torque, 456 RPM meter motors. So they are used in terms of good load capacity. So each wheel can take 20 kilograms of load. And then we have the microcontroller. So here we have used a TNC 3.6. Why we have gone from a TNC 3.6 is that we need more interrupt pin for all the 4 encoders in each wheel. So that's why we needed interrupt PWM pins. Then we have inertial measurement units, which is gyroscope, which has got an accelerometer and a magnetometer. So we calibrate these, and the direction and the odometry data is confirmed by the inertial measurement unit. So when a autonomous vehicle or autonomous robot needs to move on a map, it needs to have the XYZ coordinate of the robot with respect to a fixed frame. So we call that as a odometry frame. Then we have NVIDIA Jetson Nano. This is the robot computer that we are using in terms of processing all the data. So we have a small 128 GB flash drive in terms of attached to this, where we program the ROS. We connect to the Jetson Nano through our laptop by SSH into the robot, so that we are able to control this computer through Wi-Fi. We have wheel encoders. As I said, the wheel encoders are to give the odometry data in terms of how much the wheel has turned through Hall effect sensor. So that also we will show you. Then we have the RP LiDAR and the chassis frame. So this is how we built this autonomous educational robot, to demonstrate the power of ROS and also to teach robot operating system to various students. In terms of Jetson Nano, as I said, it is a little bit on a better processing. It has got a 4 GB memory with 64-bit processor, as well as it has got 4 USB drives. It has got a camera connectivity. It has got good quality video for image and AI. So we prefer this. We started this project with a Raspberry Pi, but we found some hang-up issues, so we shifted to a Jetson Nano for this robot. So a little bit about wheel encoder, a very important part of the robot. I need to move how much distance in X, Y, and Z. I need to have a feedback loop. So this is a Hall effect encoder. So Hall effect basically gives a potential difference when the magnet turns. So there is a magnet and the wheel. You can see this is a small magnetic wheel and the rotor. So there is a magnet here. It goes into the bottom of the shaft of the motor. You can see the 4 motors of the robot. So this is how it works. There are 4 outputs of this encoders, which are plus VCC ground, as well as there are encoder A signal and B signal. Why do we need 2 encoder signal? Is that when the wheel turns clockwise, I get a positive pulse. When the wheel turns backward, I get a negative pulse. So I need to know the rotation, direction, as well as distance, how much the robot has covered. So this is the advantage of using an encoder. Now this is the one of the final slides that we have. So here I am trying to explain you how this robot performs a laser scan through the LiDAR, how the LiDAR works, and you will see the scanning, that is live scanning, that happens when the robot moves. So I will play this video, and after the video, I will just explain you few points. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Am I
sir, we can
visible?
hear you.
Yeah, so now you can see there is a 360 rotation of the LiDAR, and the robot is placed over here. So when you move when the laser scan moves, it makes the mapping of the walls which are in this room. You can see the laser scan has made, this is the laser scan, and it has made mapping of all the walls in this autonomous, in this room, and also various objects that are there. Now you can see I'm moving my hand, and you will find that the lasers can deflect and show the moving hand in an image. So please notice this very carefully, because this is the background of autonomous object detection when the vehicle is moving. So this is very important input for the autonomous vehicle to entry into the system to understand a movement of a vehicle. So just see once again. You can see my hand is moving, and you can see the laser scan is also reflecting back. So it is moving with my hands, and you can see the laser scan is also moving with my hand. So this is a very important factor for the autonomous robot to decide whether I should move or select this path for movement. Okay, now I go to G mapping, which is, as I said, the global map and local map. So I will explain you how this robot makes the map of this room so that it can navigate itself autonomously. So the package that I'm using in robot operating system, it is called G mapping. There is another mapping called Hector Slam, but we are using G mapping because we are using odometry data. So my robot is here, and the laser scan has now started building a two-dimensional map. So when the map is created, you will find certain black spots and certain white spots. The black spot is stored as 1 in the matrix of the map, which says that it is an object. So global map says that there is a chair there, or there is a table there, or there is a wall there, and it becomes black. So black is stored as 1, and the empty area is stored as 0. So this is how the autonomous robot knows what is an object and what is not an object for obstacle. So just see this video carefully. How the map is created. Now the robot is moved to a teleop keyboard. So I'm using my laptop keyboard to move the robot to create this map. So just see this carefully. You'll see the map here. So now as you see, the robot has moved from the entire room. It went here, it went to the end, and it created the exact two-dimensional map of the house from where it needs to move. So think this as a global map. Now let us go to a local map. Can you see these black spots? These are the obstacles. So it has stored them as an obstacle in the global map. So when the robot navigates autonomously, in its memory, it will have the global map. It will know that 5 meters from here, there is an obstacle. But if I remove that obstacle, the robot will clear it in the local map. So that is the difference between a global and a local map. So that was all about how the map is created. So now what we have done, we have laser scanned the area. We have made a map of the room. Now let us see a camera-based navigation video, which is based on the camera view. So I will play the video. So you will find this video, the robot moves through various obstacles through camera recognition. Right, so that was that is, you could see how the movement is happening and various obstacles are being. So I will show a final video of autonomous movement. So here in this video, on two sides, one side you will find the entire map, the local map, and the path planned by the robot in red and the actual path. So I will try to show this video because as the audio is not there, so I'll try my best to explain it. So that was the end of the autonomous movement, autonomous G mapping, and how the robot traveled from point A to point B with various obstacles, how it checked the local map, how it went into a autonomous movement with the global map. So this is the very basic educational robot that we have built for all of you to understand. We wanted this course to actually happen on a real lab or actual school, but due to circumstances, we could not launch this earlier. So this is something to understand how you can build autonomous robot, how you can learn robot operating system, and how you can autonomously navigate that. The same applies for other autonomous vehicle, whether you make a boat or whether you make a small a drone which flies autonomously indoor as well as outdoor. So this was all about autonomous vehicle and robot operating system.
Sir,
So yeah,
Sumitra sir,
yeah,
sir, there are few questions in our chat.
yeah.
So I think we will take them now.
Yeah, we will
proceeding.
take them now. So I'll just escape from this presentation and come to the chat window. Just hold on. Yeah, is it visible? Right.
Yes, sir. It is
Yeah,
clearly
yeah.
visible.
Please go ahead. Okay. So I'll try to read them. A lot of questions have come, and sorry. We will share the PPT with
Sir,
you.
sir,
Yeah,
I will read a question for
Yes,
you.
definitely.
Yeah,
yeah,
Vidhi
please.
ma'am, please go ahead with the question.
Rani ma'am, should I go ahead or you?
No, ma'am, Vidhi ma'am, you please.
Sir, basically, sir, what a wonderful session. In fact, I fully agree with you that whenever there is innovation and technology joins hand with that latest technology, definitely children, it was a very, very wonderful
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you so much. We tried our best in terms of doing something which is a very practical
That
oriented.
Shekhar has posted, he says, will automatic.
Shall I read it? Shall I read it and answer?
Am I not audible?
Ma'am, it is getting little bit in terms of getting stuck, the voice.
Rani ma'am, please ask questions on behalf of children, please.
Yeah, I'm going ahead with this. Sir, there's a question from Webber. He's asking, what if autonomous car kills a person who will take the responsibility for it?
Vaibhav, a very important question that you have asked. Now, we cannot launch autonomous vehicles which are prone to killing anybody. Let us be very frank and honest. All the technology that we are discussing here is to make the autonomous vehicle as safe, as secure as possible. As I said, when a system failure happens in an autonomous vehicle, the system has enough potential to give the control back or return back to the launch. Uh, Mike, we could not make that video, but if this robot gets stuck, it returns back and cannot accomplishes its task. It comes back to the launch pad. So as I said, yes, you are right. Autonomous vehicles need to be absolutely safe. The speed, the thing, that is why so many tests are happened and it is still not commercialized. Thank you.
So to add on to the sir's point,
Sir,
what Vaibhav has asked is actually the main question right now. Because in the starting of the presentation, we have mentioned the 3 laws of robotics. In that law of robotics, a robot should never harm an human. That is the major rule that an autonomous car has to follow. And that is the development that is still going on. The autonomous car or the self-drive car or the autonomous guided vehicle has to be entirely fail-safe. That is the point of entire path navigation and everything.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Mayank, actually,
Yeah.
children are talking about Indian roads and they are concerned about if there is a pothole, the waterlogged street. Will this car be able to sense it?
Ma'am, it will sense it. If, sir, if you can go to the presentation, sir. Now you see that image recognition video. Sir, if you can play it again. So the last slide, last slide, last slide. Yes, sir. Now, sir, move it to the end of the video. Okay, I think there would be some problem. If in this video we have shown it in that way, at the end of the video, the robot approaches an area where there is a carpet laid down. So what it does before reaching to that, it tries to climb it. And then when it sees that it's causing a lot of disruption, it tries to take another path. So that level of automation has to be achieved, and it can be achieved through that deep modeling or the deep learning thing. Like if I can show it to a road that this road is a straight one, when it will show a surface deflection in the contours in the image that is getting received, it will present it as a not a common road. It will define a new path for that. So yes, with deep learning and combining it with the laser techniques, it is possible to develop a path which can be a pothole free. I hope I have answered it.
Okay, that's good to know. Another child, Ayushman Negi, writes that Tesla, yes, sir, definitely. Tesla Model S has no visible sensors, as you have explained, whereas BMW has so many sensors. Which is more reliable, a visible sensor or a hidden sensor?
See, currently, what I can tell you that there are two things that are available right now. What sir has shown in the presentation, there is an active sensor also, and there is a passive sensor also. Now, the thing is, the most common thing or the design problem that comes with an autonomous vehicle is that these sensors require a lot of energy. So obviously, the consumption of the power is much more higher in the autonomous vehicles. So to manage that, there are different groups like BMW, Tesla, Waymo, Volvo. They go for different type of sensors to manage that problem. Now what Tesla does, Tesla goes only for the camera thing. Now the cameras are easily powered through solar cells also. So that is a power requirement that it takes from solar cells, feed it to the camera so that there is no burden on the vehicle. At the same time, what BMW does, it mounts a 360-degree lidar on the top so that it doesn't have to have an interaction with the cameras and all. The current, what every engineering aesthetics or what every R&D is assuming and what every R&D is accepting, that the solution to this problem of level 5 automation lies in a hybrid solution. We cannot have an every ECM or an ECU for every type of camera. It has to be a hybrid solution that can present an overall problem, reducing the power expenditure also. Like for example, in this video, sir has shown that we have taken a Jetson Nano that can perform capability of both deep camera learning and the laser learning through active sensor of LiDAR. So that is the thing that we have to find an optimum answer, that which sensor and which sensor we have to mesh through to get a very optimum solution. I hope I have answered the query.
Okay, so good to know about it, sir. Yes, definitely, sir, definitely. Sir, do we have time for one more question?
As many
Sure,
questions.
sure. Please go ahead.
Because there are so many
As
questions.
many questions. Achha, before you, there is one
Pratyush,
question that came in the starting. That can we visit your lab?
Children, three questions. Component, electrical, every component that you put in a vehicle, they will have their own expiry time. Secondly, service would be very costly. Third, is there no ethical issue of self-driven cars? So I have put three questions into one. One, expiry date. Second, cost of servicing involved. And third is ethical issues.
Okay, let me answer that, Mayank. So let
Yes,
us
sir.
look at in terms of reliability. Yes, when you're dealing with
Yes, sir.
cars which humans are going to be using autonomously, that is, it is going to carry humans inside the car. The sensors normally, let us go back to the current sensor, the modern day car, whatever car that you're using, like if I talk about, since I work with Hyundai now, if I talk about the wheel speed sensor of a simple car like the Hyundai Verna, the life of that wheel speed sensor is more than 3 lakh kilometers. Nothing happens beyond 3 lakh kilometers. So life of these tested components are always calibrated in terms of how many kilometers the system will run. Whenever a design is made, it is designed to last for a minimum period of 1 lakh kilometers. It is not with the age of the car, that is 10 years, 15 years, or 9 years. Whenever a system is designed, it is designed for a life cycle of 1 lakh kilometers. That is the minimum life to 5 lakh, 3 lakh, and 4 lakh. So as I said, the reliability of these components are very robust. The power supply modules that are used are very, very robust, and the sensors are calibrated in such a way that it can take certain environmental issues, like somebody mentioned that if rainwater or flood water, the sensors need to take. So when flood waters, all these wheel speed sensors of our cars move in flooded water, you will not find that any failure or anything happens to the wheel speed sensor, although it is totally submerged in water. So this was just an example on sensor. And the next question, ma'am, was related to in terms of the technology, right, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in terms of technology, in terms of using this.
Sir, actually,
Yeah, please go ahead.
definitely, sir, it is. We are very glad to know that they are calibrated to run so many kilometers. But actually, children, they are of the concern that since we are switching on so many things, so is cyber security an issue? That was the third leg of my question. That we are keeping our GPU, our own position, everything by using this. So is it ethically correct?
Wonderful question. And there is a lot of debate on this topic in terms of whether internationally, in terms of SAE or the National Safety Transportation Board, and other. See, if you look at the capability of hacking and getting into the system, I totally understand in a mesh network, there are certain things which are being hacked and things go wrong. See, when we are designing such autonomous vehicle, the system securities are very robust. There are a lot of syncing of data with the matching of information with various networks. So if a connected car moves, as I said, the data is just sent to the server and the input is always restricted back to the car. So imagine autonomous, for example, a missile. Can you hack a missile which flies from A to B, which is used in defense? You cannot, because the systems and
Definitely not.
yes. So that is the robust or the security that are used. Yes, there are a lot of debates on ethical on these hacking and others, but the computer engineers, the scientists, they make the robust system so that these systems are always prevented. And as I said, robot is always designed to have a fail safe. If something goes wrong, we can bring it back. Thank you.
I definitely agree with you, sir. Innovation is definitely where imagination meets ambition. And you have really proved true to that sentence. The Kavish Kumar asks, ultrasonic sensors fail in noisy places, harsh weather conditions. So will it be dangerous? Will is companies still working in this direction to make sure that these hindrances do not interfere with the smooth running of the vehicle?
Wonderful questions. Yes, You must have seen HCSR04 type of sensors which are used in our robotic systems. They have noise. Sometimes they collide to the wall despite having put on a particular angle. So yes, the ultrasonic sensors are basically, if you look at, they are always changed into rangefinder, basically external LiDAR or external rangefinders. The sensors which we are talking about, ultrasonic, are very specific, high performance ultrasonic sensors which are used in automobile application. They are not on the very basic. The noise filtering as well as the feedback loop has got a lot of filtering that takes place. Plus, if there is a fail-safe that happens in terms of, there are other backup sensors which take over and control them. You're right, ultrasonic sensor has disadvantage, but still they are being used in the low level obstacle and range finding. But most of the places range finders are being used are laser scanners.
Good to know, sir. Actually, one last question that a child is Tanish Jain has posted. He says that car is obviously moving faster than walking pace, and keeping our Indian scenarios on road, sometimes a child might run up on the road on the last second. Some animal may pop up. Definitely, we are making combinations with robotics to make it better, but will it be safe? Because we say that drunken drivers, the reaction time is very long, and that is why accidents happen with animals and children suddenly popping up in front of the cars. So will these cars be able to deal with such sudden situations?
Wonderful question. Now let me tell you, it's a wonderful question that the safety and as I discussed earlier is very important. Now you will notice that most of the major development on autonomous vehicles which are ground, that is cars, are happening on with the electric vehicle. Now what is the difference between an electric motor and an IC engine? In an IC engine, I still have a certain amount of flywheel torque that happens when I brake, but that does not happen in terms of a 39.4 kilowatt hour motor which is used in the Hyundai Kona or other electric vehicle. So it is just like a stopping at a standstill with a very, very, very high level of deceleration, as well as passenger safety. Like if the deceleration is more than 2G or 4G, there are all the safety net that happens. So there is a G sensor which senses the deceleration. If there is a sudden movement or sudden obstacle, the vehicle is designed or capable to have a braking system. So you can read about the various ABS systems as well as the anti-lock braking systems and other technology, which even if some object comes in front of the car, the vehicle can steer to the right and it can maintain a constant path. Obviously, the sensors, the active as well as the passive sensors, need to give very, very, very high level of feedback to avoid accidents. And that is why all the scientists, all the researchers, all the engineers are trying to perfect this process. Thank you.
So will it be a petrol car, a diesel car, a hybrid, or an electric vehicle? Fuel to be used.
In coming future, the most of the development is happening on electric vehicle in autonomous.
So I think, children, all your queries, all your answers have been answered very, very well. We are very well enlightened, and you will agree with me that our future success is directly proportional to our ability to understand, adopt, and integrate new technology into our work. It was such a wonderful webinar. I would now invite Mrs. Anjali Sharma to propose vote of thanks. Over to you, Anjali ma'am.
Thank you, Vidhi ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. The next revolution, when it comes, will be the advent of autonomous or self-driven vehicles. and the timing may be sooner than expected. Self-driven or driverless vehicles, it's a dream come true for many. It was indeed a wonderful experience learning how autonomous vehicles may be driving the future. I, on behalf of Bal Bharati Public School, Noida, would like to thank our resource person for the day, Mr. Soumitra Dey, Mentor of Change for Atal Innovation Mission, for enlightening us on the various aspects of the futuristic technology. It is my privilege to express gratitude to our principal, Mrs. Asha Prabhakar, for constantly motivating us to explore new avenues in teaching learning. My sincere appreciation is due to Vice Principal, Mrs. Anupama Motwani, and HM Senior, Mrs. Amita Ganju, for always holding hands and motivating us. A word of gratitude is due to the entire ATL Parivar for being a wonderful supporting team. Last but not the least, kudos to all our wonderful students for always exploring their passion for taking up avenues ever so new, ever so enthusiastically. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
To our wonderful
There was a quiz also.
webinar for today. Thank you so much, Mr. Soumitra Dey. Thank you, Atal team.
So there was a
Thank you.
quiz also, you said.
Yes. Thank you, madam. Thank you, principal, ma'am, for giving us this opportunity. It was wonderful to meet you all students, all the staff. And I would just share a small quiz that will be there in terms of for the students.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it clear now? Can this quiz?
Ma'am? Yes, Prabhat, we can, I think, go ahead and stop the live streaming of the webinar.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
We may
Thank you.
stop recording the webinar. It was a wonderful webinar and we come to an end to it. Thank you, everyone.